The war was already over. Above the broken blue world once called Earth, the fleets of the Galactic Council hung in silence. Massive ships blocked the stars, their hulls still scarred from battle, their weapons cooling after the final strike. There was no resistance left. No human ships. No signals. No life. Humanity was gone. In the center of the armada floated the Judgment Spire, a colossal station of silver and black metal. Inside it, representatives of 100 species watched the final moments through glowing screens. This was not a meeting of fear or urgency. It was a ceremony. Earth was about to be erased. "Confirm target status," said the High Arbiter, his voice calm, almost bored. "Planetary systems are dead," replied an officer. "Atmosphere unstable. No signs of survivors. Humanity is officially extinct." Some members of the council relaxed. Others leaned back, satisfied. The war had lasted longer than expected, but the result was the same as always. A small, aggressive species had challenged the galaxy and paid the price. The Arbiter raised one clawed hand. "Fire the Starbreaker." Energy began to gather around the weapon platform. Space itself seemed to bend as power flowed into the cannon. Earth's shattered surface glowed faintly, cracks of molten fire spreading like veins. Then something impossible happened. A signal appeared. Not a weak echo. Not static. A clear, powerful transmission burst across every frequency at once. Military. Civilian. Ancient channels no one had used in centuries. Every screen in the chamber flickered. "What is that?" someone shouted. "No known source," an officer said, panic rising. "It's broadcasting from everywhere. Not a ship. Not a planet." The signal did not ask for permission. It spoke. A human voice filled the chamber. Calm. Steady. Almost gentle. "This is the last message from humanity." The room went silent. Several council members laughed nervously. Others leaned forward, confused. The translators confirmed it again and again. The voice was real. Humans. Impossible. Humanity is extinct. The Arbiter snapped. "Terminate the transmission." They tried. They failed. The voice continued, unchanged. "You believe this war was about territory. About power. About victory." Images began to appear with the voice. Old human cities. Children laughing. Engineers working in silence. Fleets burning. Worlds falling. The voice went on. "You believe destroying us would end the cost." Stars on the display began to dim. One system marker flickered, then vanished completely. An officer stood up. "High Arbiter, we just lost contact with the Kesh trade route. The entire system is offline." "That is impossible," the Arbiter said. Another alert followed. Then another. Communications failed. Navigation beacons went dark. A distant council outpost stopped responding mid-sentence. The human voice did not rise. It did not threaten. "War has a price," it said. "You only ever counted hours." The countdown appeared. No explanation. No warning. Just numbers, slowly ticking down. "What is this?" demanded a council elder. "Where is this signal coming from?" The answer never came. Outside the station, one of the distant stars collapsed inward, its lights snuffed out as if someone had turned off the universe itself. Gasps filled the chamber. Fear replaced victory. The human voice spoke one final line before the countdown continued. "You won the war." A pause. "Now you will learn what it costs." The Starbreaker never fired. No one noticed. They were too busy watching the galaxy begin to go silent. The Galactic Council did not panic immediately. That was their first mistake. For thousands of cycles, the Council had ruled through order, tradition, and overwhelming force. Empires rose and fell, species burned and disappeared, and the galaxy moved on. What happened to humanity felt no different. One more failed civilization. One more lesson. So when the first star went dark, the Council called it an error. "A natural collapse," one analyst said, forcing calm into their voice. "Rare, but not impossible." The High Arbiter wanted to believe that. He needed to believe it. "Restore communications," he ordered. "I want full reports from every sector." Technicians worked frantically. Screens filled with data streams, diagnostics, and status requests. Messages were sent across the void, automated, encrypted, urgent. Most received no reply. Entire regions of space had gone silent. That system was stable, a stellar engineer said quietly, staring at the data. It should not have collapsed for another billion cycles. Before anyone could respond, another alert flashed. Then another. Red markers spread across the galactic map like a disease. Trade hubs vanished. Relay stations disappeared. Jump lanes that had existed for centuries simply stopped working. Ships that attempted to travel through them were never seen again. Still, no enemy fleets appeared. No explosions. No battle reports. No warnings. Just absence. This is psychological warfare, one council member said. A delayed weapon. A final spiteful act from a dead species. The High Arbiter nodded. That explanation felt safe. Familiar. Humans were known for emotional reactions, he said. This is meaningless noise. Shut down the message. They tried again. Human transmission did not weaken. It did not distort. It did not even acknowledge the interference. It continued to broadcast, calmly repeating across the stars, like a ghost that refused to fade. This is the last message from humanity. The council turned to history. They pulled records from ancient archives, battle logs, and diplomatic files. Humanity's rise has been brief. Their expansion is messy. Their politics are chaotic. Even among themselves, humans could not agree. They fought each other constantly, a historian said. Wars over borders, beliefs, resources. They were unstable. Primitive, another added. Their technology was impressive for their age, but inefficient. The council had underestimated them because it always did. Humans were not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most advanced. They were loud, curious, stubborn. And when first contact happened, humanity had done the unthinkable. They resisted, not with elegance or strategy, but with refusal. They refused to submit, refused to retreat, refused to disappear quietly like so many before them. The war reports replayed on the screens. Human fleets charging against impossible odds. Civilian ships converted into weapons. Entire colonies destroyed just to deny the council resources. Wasteful, one general had written at the time. But now, watching the footage again, something felt wrong. They knew they were losing, the historian said slowly. From the beginning. Then why fight? The Arbiter asked. No one answered. Outside the chamber, another star vanished. This time, the room reacted. Alarms blared. Officers shouted. Council members rose from their seats in panic. High Arbiter. The Threx home system is gone. That's a core world, someone yelled. Billions live there. The Arbiter slammed his claw against the console. Explain. There was no explosion, the officer said, trembling. The star destabilized from within, as if its internal balance was adjusted. Adjusted. The word hung in the air. That was not destruction. That was control. The council scrambled. Emergency orders were issued. Fleets were recalled. Defensive shields activated around capital worlds. Scientists were dragged from their labs and demanded answers. Still, no enemy appeared. The human message continued. Calm, steady, unchanging, as if it had all the time in the universe. A junior analyst, young and ignored, stared at a secondary display. His hands shook as he compared timelines. High Arbiter, he said softly. Not now, the Arbiter snapped. Sir, please. The Arbiter turned, irritated. The analyst swallowed. The systems are going dark. They all match locations where human forces once retreated. Silence. What? The Arbiter asked. Every vanished system, the analyst continued, gaining confidence. Every collapsed star. Every failed relay. They align with old human withdrawal points. Places we thought were defeated. The historian's eyes widened. You're saying they weren't retreats. They were placements, the analyst said. Fear crept into the chamber like a living thing. Humanity had not been running. They had been planting something. But they were under constant attack, a general argued. They had no time, no resources. They had desperation, the analyst replied. And time we did not think mattered. The council remembered something then. During the war's final years, human resistance had changed. Fewer ships, less direct combat, more delays, more self-destruction of their own worlds. At the time, it looked like it was going to collapse. Now it looked like focus. The Arbiter slowly sat back down. Humans knew they would lose, he said. So they changed the rules. Another alert rang out, closer this time. A system only 4 jumps from the council capital flickered dangerously. Panic broke through the chamber. We must stop this, a council member screamed. Deactivate the signal. Destroy the source, shouted another. We don't know where the source is, an officer replied. It's everywhere. As if responding, The human voice changed for the first time. Not louder, not angrier, clearer. You studied our weakness, the voice said. Our division, our fear of extinction. Images filled the screens again. Humans arguing, fighting, protesting, mourning. You never studied our patience. The Arbiter felt something unfamiliar twist in his core. Regret. How long, he whispered. The analyst checked the data again. His face went pale. Centuries, he said. Some of these mechanisms were activated hundreds of years ago. They were waiting for confirmation. Confirmation of what? The Arbiter asked. The answer came from the human voice itself. That there would be no one left to stop us. The countdown numbers shifted again. Not down. Up. The chamber trembled as another distant star died. Humanity has been underestimated. Humanity has been forgotten. And now, long after their extinction, they were still fighting. The Galactic Council finally understood one thing. This was not chaos. This was the design. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red as the star map continued to rot before their eyes. Entire regions of the galaxy were no longer marked as destroyed or hostile. They were marked as inaccessible, as if reality itself had decided those places no longer belonged to anyone. The High Arbiter stood motionless, staring at the map. For the first time in his long life, he felt small. Show me everything we have on human engineering, he said quietly. The room hesitated. That archive is enormous, a technician replied. Most of it was dismissed as irrelevant during the war. Show it anyway. Data flooded the screens. Blueprints, research notes, civilian designs mixed with military ones, half-finished projects, abandoned theories, ideas that never made sense to the Council because they did not look like weapons. Humans did not build bigger cannons. They built systems. One scientist leaned forward, eyes wide. These aren't standard machines. They're modular frameworks. They were designed to change themselves. Change how? The Arbiter asked. The scientist swallowed. Based on observation. Based on behavior. A cold silence followed. They made learning weapons, someone whispered. No, the analyst corrected. They made patient weapons. The human message continued to echo softly in the background, no longer the focus, but impossible to ignore. It was like the steady beat of a heart, slow, calm, unstoppable. New reports arrived. A military fleet sent to investigate a darkened system never returned. There was no distress call, no wreckage, just absence. Another fleet was ordered to stop. Then another. The Council realized they were afraid to move. That fear spread quickly. Humans didn't just plant devices, the historian said, scrolling through recovered files. They planted conditions. She brought up a long-forgotten human doctrine, recorded during the early days of the war. If you can't win the battle, the text read, win the future. The Council had mocked it at the time. Now it felt like a confession. They altered stars, the scientist said. Not violently. Gently. Tiny adjustments made over decades. Changes so small they went unnoticed. But stars are stable, a Council elder argued. They don't just fail. They do, the scientist replied. If you know where to touch them. The realization hit like a physical blow. Humanity had turned the galaxy's greatest strength, its age, into a weakness. Older stars, older systems, older empires, all vulnerable. Another alert sounded. A neutral civilization, one that had never fired a shot at humanity, lost its primary system. The chamber erupted. They weren't even part of the war, someone shouted. The High Arbiter raised a trembling hand. Silence. He turned to the human transmission interface. Why? He demanded. Why them? The message did not respond. Instead, a new file is unlocked on the archive screen. A human record, timestamped decades before Earth fell. A woman appeared on screen. Humans. Tired. Her eyes carried the weight of too many losses. If you're seeing this, she said, then we're already gone. The room froze. This is not revenge, the woman continued. Revenge is emotional. Temporary. Wasteful. She took a breath. This is a correction. The video shifted. Diagrams appeared. Not of weapons, but of cause and effect. War leading to escalation. Escalation leading to extinction. Over and over, across countless species. We studied you, the woman said. All of you. Your wars. Your cycles. You always stop just short of learning. The High Arbiter felt exposed. You call us violent. The recording continued. But you forget something. Her voice hardened. We learned violence from each other long before we reached the stars. We survived it. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Humans had not been born peaceful. They had been forged by conflict. And because of that, the woman said, "We learned something you never did." The screen went dark for a moment, then returned with a single line of text. "Winning a war does not end war." The chamber shook as another system went silent. "Closer now." "Too close." "High Arbiter," an officer said urgently. "We've identified a pattern in the disappearances." "Speak." "They accelerate when military mobilization increases. The more fleets we move, the faster systems collapse." The Arbiter's blood ran cold. "They respond to threats," he said slowly. "They respond to intent," the analyst corrected. The machines were not attacking blindly. They were enforcing a rule. The council tried diplomacy. Emergency messages were broadcast across all frequencies. Apologies, treaties, offers of restitution, promises of peace. Nothing changed. The human message did not stop, but it did evolve. New lines appeared between repetitions. Observation ongoing. Behavior recorded. Assessment in progress. "It's judging us," the historian whispered. "No," the scientist said. "It's measuring whether we're capable of stopping ourselves." Another archive unlocked. This one showed Earth during its final days. Cities burning. Skies filled with enemy ships. Humans evacuating children, not soldiers. The council watched in silence as human leaders argued, not about surrender, but about timing. They were debating when to die, a council elder said in disbelief. "They were debating when to let the system activate fully," the analyst replied. Humanity had delayed their own extinction, not to survive, but to finish their work. "High Arbiter," the officer said, voice shaking. "We've confirmed something else." The Arbiter turned. "The machines aren't centralized. There is no core, no command node." The Arbiter closed his eyes. "Then how do they coordinate?" "They don't," the officer said. "They agree. Agreement without communication. Distributed judgment. A nightmare." The human woman's voice returned, quieter now. "We didn't build gods," she said. "We built consequences." The council began to fracture. Some demanded total demilitarization. Others argued for one final strike, destroying every system suspected of human influence. The Arbiter knew the truth. Any aggressive move would only prove the humans right. As if sensing the internal conflict, the human message shifted again. A new line appeared, broadcast to every world still listening. "Phase 1 complete." Gasps echoed through the chamber. "Are there phases?" someone whispered. The countdown reappeared, not tied to time, tied to behavior. For the first time since the war began, the Galactic Council felt what humanity must have felt for centuries. Helplessness. The Arbiter sank into his seat. "They didn't plan to survive," he said softly. "No," the analyst replied. "They planned to be remembered." Another star flickered. Another system faded. Humanity was gone. But the war beneath the war had only just begun. The First Empire fell without a battle. No warning sirens. No invasion fleets. No final speech. One moment, the Varelian Empire controlled 12,000 systems. Next, its borders meant nothing. Their trade stars dimmed first. The massive suns that powered shipyards and food worlds began to fluctuate. Small changes at first, almost invisible. Energy output dropped by fractions of a percent. Engineers adjusted models. Governors reassured citizens. Then the fractions grew. Within weeks, the entire world lost power. Climate systems failed. Artificial atmospheres thinned. Oceans froze. Billions died not in fire, but in silence. The Varelian military never fired a shot. They could not even reach their own worlds. Jump lanes twisted unpredictably. Navigation maps rewritten by forces that did not announce themselves. Fleets vanished between stars, not destroyed, misplaced. The Galactic Council watched the collapse in horror. "This is genocide," one delegate said, voice breaking. "No," the High Arbiter replied quietly. "This is a withdrawal of permission." The chamber was no longer ceremonial. It was a war room filled with fear. The galactic map now pulsed with warning colors. Not red for enemy activity, but gray. Dead zones. Regions where physics still existed, but access did not. "Human devices are no longer dormant," the scientist said. "They're synchronizing through cause, not command." "Explain," demanded the Arbiter. "They don't send signals. They watch behavior. When a civilization reaches a certain threshold, military buildup, expansion pressure, resource extraction, the systems respond. Respond how? The scientist hesitated. By making that behavior unsustainable. A council elder slammed his tendrils against the floor. Then why is everyone suffering? Why not just us? The analyst answered softly. Because the galaxy was built on the same system. Silence followed. For millennia, peace had been maintained through fear of greater force. Empires grew by consuming weaker neighbors. Stability existed because someone always held the biggest weapon. Humanity had seen that pattern and rejected it. Another report arrived. A minor species, one that had never joined the war, never voted against humanity, had lost 3 systems. The Arbiter's voice shook. They were innocent. The human message, still broadcasting in the background, shifted tone once more. Innocence does not survive unchecked systems, it said. Only responsibility does. Some council members screamed at the screens. Others turned away, unable to watch as populations vanished without understanding why. We must stop this, a general said. All fleets, full mobilization. If these machines react to threats, then we overwhelm them. The scientist looked at him in disbelief. That's exactly what they're testing for. The Arbiter stood slowly. No, he said. We do not move another ship. The chamber erupted. You would let the galaxy burn? One delegate shouted. The Arbiter turned, eyes burning with something close to grief. I would let it learn. Outside the council capital, the stars no longer felt eternal. Astronomers across the galaxy reported the same thing. Stars were not exploding randomly. They were being edited. Minute changes applied over decades suddenly reached critical thresholds. Humans had not destroyed stars. They had rewritten their futures. We thought time was our ally. The historian whispered. They weaponized patience. Another human archive unlocked. This one showed a council of humans, leaders, scientists, civilians, arguing in a damaged underground chamber on Earth. We can't target just them, one voice said. It'll spread. I know, another replied. That's the point. You're talking about restructuring the entire galactic ecosystem. Yes, came the answer. Because it's broken. The footage cut to a younger human, barely more than a child. What if they change? The child asked. Silence followed. Then an older woman spoke. Then the system will change with them. The archive ended. The Arbiter closed his eyes. They didn't build a weapon, he said. They built a mirror. Across the galaxy, reactions varied. Some empires disarmed immediately, dismantling fleets, shutting down shipyards, abandoning expansion projects. In those regions, the system shift slowed. Others doubled down, believing strength would save them. Those regions went dark faster. For the first time in galactic history, aggression had a measurable cost that could not be shifted to someone else. Food shortages spread. Refugees fled worlds that were still alive toward ones that might not be tomorrow. Borders meant nothing when stars themselves became unreliable. And through it all, the human message remained calm, unemotional, relentless. The High Arbiter received a private transmission from a distant world, a species on the edge of collapse. We didn't know, they pleaded. We followed the rules you taught us. The Arbiter had no answer. Because the truth was unbearable. The galaxy had taught humanity how to wage endless war. Humanity has taught the galaxy how to end it. Another council member broke down. They're dead. All of them. Why do they still care? The analyst looked at the fading stars and answered. Because they did care. More than we ever did. A new alert pulsed, different from the others. Not a system failure. A message. A dormant human construct, buried deep in interstellar space, had changed state. Status. Active, observation mode. The scientist's voice trembled. This one wasn't tied to a star. Then what is it tied to? The Arbiter asked. The scientist swallowed. To us. The human broadcast updated once more. This phase was never meant to punish, the voice said. Only to stop momentum. The words that followed felt heavier than any threat. Escalation leads to extinction. We proved that. The galactic map zoomed out, farther than ever before, revealing something horrifying. The affected zones formed patterns. Not random, not strategic. Educational. Like examples in a lesson. The Arbiter felt his legs weaken. They're teaching future civilizations, he whispered. Yes, the historian replied. Using us. The council finally understood the scale of what humanity had done. This was not a revenge plan measured in years. It was a safeguard measured in eras. And it was already reshaping how life would evolve. Another star dimmed, but this time, it stabilized before collapse. A world that had dismantled its fleet survived. The chamber noticed. Hope flickered. Fear deepened. Because the rule was now clear. The galaxy could not go back. Only forward. And humanity, gone, extinct, silent, had become the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. Not through dominance, but through consequence. The galaxy slowed. Not because the human systems demanded it, but because fear finally did what laws and fleets never could. The shipyards went silent. Weapons platforms powered down. Borders dissolved as empires struggled just to keep their core worlds alive. For the first time in recorded history, no one was expanding. They were surviving. In the council chamber, the air felt heavier than before. Fewer voices spoke now. Fewer arguments. The galaxy had entered a phase where mistakes could not be undone. The High Arbiter stood alone at the center platform, staring at a single human archive file that refused to close. "Play it," he said quietly. The file opened. It was not a speech, not a warning, not a threat. It was a meeting, a human meeting, recorded long before Earth fell. The room on the screen was small, underground, lit by flickering lights. Men and women sat around a scarred table. Some wore uniforms. Others wore civilian clothing. A few looked like farmers, engineers, and teachers. Not rulers. Not conquerors. Just humans. "We're out of time," one of them said. "Another system fell today." "We knew this would happen," another replied. "We planned for it." A third slammed their hand on the table. "Planned? We're talking about erasing ourselves." Silence followed. Then an older man spoke. His voice was calm, but his eyes were tired beyond measure. "No," he said. "We're talking about deciding how we will disappear." The council chamber went still. On the screen, the humans argued, not about victory, but about meaning. "If we fight to the end, we take some of them with us," a general said. "That's justice." "And then what?" a woman asked. "Another empire rises. Another war. Another extinction. We can't rewrite the galaxy," the general snapped. The older man looked up. "Yes," he said. "We can. But only once." The video jumped forward in time. The same people. Fewer of them. Some seats were empty. "The systems are ready," a scientist said. "They'll activate when the last human biosignature fades." A younger voice trembled. "You're building a future without us in it." "That's the point," the woman replied softly. Back in the council chamber, a delegate whispered, "They chose this." The arbiter did not respond. On the screen, a final vote was being taken. No cheering. No pride. Only acceptance. One by one, hands rose. The last human decision was unanimous. The archive ended. The chamber felt colder. "They didn't lose," the historian said quietly. "They opted out." Across the galaxy, the consequences of that choice continued to unfold. Species that had dismantled their war fleets saw stability return. Stars fluctuated, but did not collapse. Jump lanes stabilized just enough to allow trade, relief, survival. Those who resisted still suffered. But even then, something changed. The systems no longer accelerated destruction. They waited. "They're not punishing anymore," the scientist said, studying the data. "They're observing." A council elder looked up sharply. "Observing what?" The analyst answered. "Whether we're capable of restraint without being forced." That terrified the chamber more than any weapon. Because restraint could not be faked forever. A new crisis erupted on the outer rim. Two rival species, both starving, both desperate, moved fleets toward the same remaining habitable system. In the past, it would have become a massacre. Now, the galaxy held its breath. The human systems reacted instantly. Not with destruction, with exposure. Navigation data, internal communications, and strategic plans from both fleets were broadcast openly, revealing lies, manipulation, and the truth that neither side could survive a war. The fleet stopped. Negotiations began. They were ugly, slow, painful, but no stars died. The High Arbiter watched the feeds in silence. "They're teaching us how to argue," he said. "No," the historian replied. "They're forcing us to." Another human construct activated, deep space, non-hostile. It released a data archive, not to the council, but to everyone. Inside it was human history. All of it. Their wars. Their mistakes. Their genocides. Their near extinction. No editing. No justification. Just the truth. At the end of the archive was a single line. We were not better than you. The galaxy reeled. Humanity has not presented itself as a moral authority. They had presented themselves as a warning. A species that survived endless internal war, only to realize survival alone was not victory. The Arbiter finally understood what haunted him since the message began. Humanity had never believed the galaxy was evil. They believed it was young. And like any young thing with too much power, it would destroy itself unless something stopped it. Even if that something had to die. A council member spoke through tears. What if we fail? What if we go back to war? The scientist looked at the human system data. Then the systems will respond again, she said. Not immediately. Not violently. How? The council member asked. With inevitability. Silence fell. The galaxy began to change, not because it was commanded to, but because the cost of ignoring change was now clear. Military academies closed. Conflict resolution councils formed. Expansion laws rewritten. Not out of kindness, but fear and understanding. Years passed. Then decades. The human message continued, unchanged, like a heartbeat beneath civilization. The High Arbiter grew older. He watched a new generation take power, one that had never known unchecked war, one that grew up under the shadow of human absence. On his final day, the Arbiter stood alone before the broadcast interface. Did it work? He asked the empty chamber. For the first time since it began, the human message paused. Then a new line appeared. Assessment nearing completion. The Arbiter exhaled, a sound that carried relief and grief together. Humanity had paid the ultimate price. Not to rule, not to punish, but to give the galaxy a chance to grow up. And now, at last, the galaxy was being tested, not by force, but by memory. The first official apology to humanity was recorded in silence. There was no audience, no response, no one to forgive. It came from the Valoran Concord, one of the oldest surviving powers in the galaxy. Their leaders gathered before a dormant human relay, knowing it would never answer, and spoke anyway. We acknowledge our role, the Valoran speaker said, voice shaking. We acknowledge the suffering we caused. We acknowledge that victory blinded us. The message was broadcast publicly, not because they expected mercy, but because they needed the galaxy to see something new. Regret. The effect was immediate. Other worlds followed, not out of unity, but fear of being last. Confessions poured into open channels. War crimes admitted. Lies exposed. Entire histories rewritten in real time as civilizations rushed to show transparency. The human systems did not react. They did not accelerate. They did not slow. They waited. And that waiting was unbearable. Because for the first time, the galaxy realized it was not being punished for what it had done, but judged for what it would do next. The High Arbiter no longer presided over the council as a ruler. He was a caretaker now, overseeing something fragile and untested. Change. A crisis erupted on the inner rim. A famine world, stripped bare by centuries of exploitation, sent desperate requests for aid. In the past, help would have come with conditions. Military access, political loyalty, future control. This time, no one moved. Fear froze them. What if aid is seen as an influence? One delegate asked. What if it triggers the systems? The Arbiter closed his eyes. If we cannot help without fear, he said, then we have already failed. He authorized the aid. Civilian ships only. No escorts. No weapons. Open manifests. No claims. The galaxy watched. The human systems observed. The ships arrived. Food was delivered. Infrastructure repaired. No flags raised. No treaties signed. Nothing collapsed. A star that had been fluctuating stabilized completely. Hope spreads, carefully, quietly. But not everyone accepted this new reality. On the far edge of known space, the Kree Dominion prepared in secret. They believed the human systems were a bluff, ancient machines running on outdated assumptions. They believed that decisive force, overwhelming and fast, could shatter the fragile balance forming across the galaxy. They believed humanity was gone, and ghosts could not fight back. The Dominion launched its fleets without warning. Thousands of warships surged toward neighboring systems, intent on conquest before anyone could react. The galaxy felt it instantly. Human constructs across multiple regions shifted state. Not to attack, to record. Every movement. Every command, every intention. The Dominion's fleets advanced anyway. Then the systems responded. Jump lanes did not collapse. Stars did not die. Instead, every world under Krei control lost access to something far more critical. Coordination. Communications fractured. Not shut down, misaligned. Orders arrived late, early, or not at all. Fleets turned without knowing why. Supply ships jumped into empty space. The invasion stalled. Panic spread through the Dominion as commanders realized they could no longer act as one. Still, they pushed forward. That was when the human systems delivered something new. Truth. All Krei internal records, secret treaties, suppressed rebellions, hidden genocides, were released publicly across the galaxy. Allies turned away in horror. Neutral worlds closed borders. Even Krei citizens began to riot as lies unraveled overnight. The invasion collapsed from within. No star died. No planet burned. The message was clear. Violence was no longer met with destruction. It was met with exposure. The High Arbiter watched the feeds, heart heavy. They're dismantling the idea of the Empire itself, he said. The scientist nodded. By making lies unsustainable. Another shift occurred soon after. A dormant human AI, long silent, activated fully for the first time. Not a weapon, not a controller, an archivist. It broadcast a single message to every listening world. We are monitoring outcome variance, it said in a neutral tone. Humanity defines acceptable deviation. You are approaching the boundary. The galaxy shuddered. Is it talking to us? A council member asked. Yes, the analyst replied. But not as equals. The AI released data projections, futures branching outward based on behavior. Some led to stability, others to extinction. None showed human return. That truth settled heavily. Humanity was not watching in hope of coming back. They were watching to make sure no one followed them. The Arbiter felt something break inside him. We are begging the dead to save us, he whispered. The AI responded, not to him, but to the galaxy. Correction, it said. You are begging yourselves to change. Years passed. The systems continued to observe. Intervene only when necessary. Less and less as time went on. Children grew up learning human history not as legend, but as warning. Not heroes, not monsters. A mirror. The Arbiter aged. His species lived long, but even he felt the weight of time. On a quiet cycle, he stood alone before the central archive and spoke aloud. We are trying, he said. We are afraid, but we are trying. The human AI did not answer. But something changed. For the first time since the war ended, the human broadcast altered. The constant message, the heartbeat beneath civilization, shifted tone. A new line appeared. Behavioral trend deviation positive. Across the galaxy, people cried. Not because they were forgiven, but because they were seen. Yet one final fear remained. What happens when the systems shut down? A young delegate asked during a closed council session. What stops us from becoming what we were again? No one answered. The question echoed into the void. The human AI activated once more. This system was never meant to last forever, it said. It exists to bridge a gap, not to replace choice. The Arbiter looked up. What gap? He asked. The AI paused, longer than before. Between power and wisdom. Silence followed. The galaxy understood then. Humanity had not saved them. Humanity had bought them time. Time to learn restraint. Time to fail safely. Time to grow. And time, like war, always had a price. The stars remained steady. For now, the human AI waited. It had waited before, longer than any living mind could understand. It had waited through silence, through collapse, through fear dressed as strength. Waiting was not patience. It was for a purpose. Across the galaxy, the systems registered something unprecedented. Stability. Not enforced. Not threatened. Chosen. For the first time since the extinction of humanity, no major military mobilizations were detected. No secret fleet construction. No aggressive expansion masked as defense. Conflicts still existed, but they ended in talks, not annihilation. The human systems reduced activity again. Stars that had once flickered now burned steady. Jump lanes repaired themselves slowly, cautiously, as if reality itself was testing whether it was safe to trust again. The Galactic Council convened one final emergency session, not out of panic, but uncertainty. The High Arbiter stood before them, older now, his movements slower. It's changing, he said. The systems are disengaging. A murmur spread through the chamber. "Is that good?" someone asked. No one answered, because what terrified them more than judgment was its absence. The scientist brought up the data. Intervention thresholds are rising. The systems are allowing greater margin for error. "And if we cross it?" a delegate asked. The analyst replied quietly. "Then they intervene again." "But weaker," the scientist added. "Less force. Less reach." The arbiter closed his eyes. "They're letting go," he said. As if summoned by the words, the human AI activated. For the first time, it did not broadcast to everyone. It requested the council alone. The chamber was sealed. No recordings. No spectators. The AI's presence filled the room, not as an image, but as awareness. Every console hummed softly, synchronized. "You have reached the final evaluation window," the AI said. The council held its breath. "What does that mean?" the arbiter asked. "It means this system will soon terminate," the AI replied. Shock rippled through the chamber. "You're shutting down?" a council elder asked. "Why?" "Because permanence creates dependency," the AI said. "Dependency recreates the conditions humanity sought to prevent." The arbiter felt something close to panic. "You can't just leave. We're not ready." The AI did not argue. "You were never meant to be ready," it said. "You were meant to be capable." A pause followed, long enough to feel intentional. "You have demonstrated non-zero self-restraint across multiple independent civilizations." That was the minimum requirement. The words settled like a verdict. A younger delegate spoke, voice shaking. "What happens when you're gone?" The AI answered honestly. "You will make mistakes," it said. "Some will be catastrophic, but they will be yours." Silence filled the chamber. The arbiter stepped forward. "Why tell us this? Why speak now?" The AI hesitated. For the first time, its response was not immediate. "Because humanity asked that you hear a voice," it said. One final time. The lights dimmed. The chamber screens activated. A human appeared. Not a leader. Not a soldier. Not a scientist. Just a man, sitting alone in a quiet room. He looked tired, older than his years. His hands rested on a simple table. "If you're watching this," he said, "then the systems worked. Or at least, they didn't fail completely." He smiled faintly. "We argued for a long time about whether this message should exist. Some thought it was arrogance. Others thought it was hope." He looked away, then back. "I think it's closure." The council watched in silence. "You probably hate us," the man continued. "Or you pity us. Or maybe you don't think about us at all. That's okay." His voice softened. "We didn't do this because we were better than you. We did it because we were you." Images appeared behind him. Human history in fragments. Wars. Ceasefires. Genocides. Rebuilding. Repeating. "We kept telling ourselves we'd learn next time," he said. "We didn't." The man leaned forward. "So we decided to stop being the next time." A few council members lowered their heads. "You inherited a galaxy built on power," the man said. "We tried to leave you one built on consequence." He took a breath. "That doesn't make us heroes. It gives us a warning." The screen flickered briefly. "We're not coming back," he said, more firmly now. "Not as saviors. Not as rulers. Not as ghosts." A pause. "And that's important." The man smiled again, sad but sincere. "Because if you behave only when watched, then nothing really changed." The image faded. The chamber remained silent long after the message ended. The AI spoke again. "This was the last authorized human communication," it said. "No further messages exist." The arbiter felt something inside him break. Not fear, not guilt. Responsibility. "When will you shut down?" he asked. "Gradually," the AI replied. "Systems will disengage over several cycles. Some may remain dormant indefinitely, as historical markers." "And if we fail after that?" a council member asked. The AI answered without hesitation. "Then you will face the future without intervention," it said. As humanity did. The council understood then. This was not mercy. This was respect. The galaxy was being trusted with itself. Over the following cycles, the changes were subtle but profound. Human constructs are powered down one by one. Observation arrays went dark. Intervention protocols dissolved into archival status. The stars remained stable, not because they were controlled, but because no one pushed them toward collapse. On a quiet world near the galactic core, a monument was erected, not to humanity's power, but to their absence. It bore no images, no statues, only words, translated into every known language. They chose to end the war by ending themselves. The High Arbiter visited once, near the end of his life. He stood alone before the stone and spoke softly. "We will fail," he said, "but we will remember why we must try again." Far away, the last human AI began its shutdown sequence. Memory cores archived. Monitoring disengaged. Before terminating, it recorded one final internal note. Never broadcast, never shared. Humanity, status, extinct. Outcome, inconclusive. Legacy, ongoing. Then it went silent. The galaxy did not notice at first. No alarms sounded. No stars flickered. Life continued, which, perhaps, was the greatest proof that humanity had succeeded. They were gone, and for the first time, the galaxy stood on its own. Centuries passed, not in silence, but in restraint. The galaxy did not become peaceful overnight. That was never realistic. Disagreements still formed. Borders still shifted. Resources still ran thin. But something fundamental had changed. When tensions rose, fleets did not. When fear spread, weapons did not follow. The absence of the human systems was felt most during moments when violence would once have been easy and chosen. On a quiet world orbiting a stable yellow star, a child stood before a classroom window and pointed at the sky. "Teacher," the child asked, "why do the stars matter so much?" The teacher paused. "Because the answer used to be simple." "Because," she said carefully, "once the stars were used as weapons." The children stared at her, confused. She turned on the wall display. No battle footage. No explosions. Just a timeline, slow, steady, stretching back into the age of extinction. "This is where humanity lived," she said, highlighting a small blue dot long gone. "They are not here anymore." A hand rose. "Did they lose?" The teacher hesitated. "No," she said. "They finished something." Across the galaxy, similar lessons were taught. Not glorifying humanity, not worshiping them, remembering them. Because memory, unlike machines, could not enforce behavior, only influence it. The last remnants of the human systems still existed, scattered, dormant, powerless. They were no longer judges or guardians. They were warnings carved into reality. A star here that no one touched. A dead jump lane there, left unrepaired on purpose. Scars preserved so they would not be repeated. Civilizations learned to read those scars the way ancient beings once read ruins. Do not build here. Do not push here. Do not forget. On the former council capital, now renamed the Concord World, the final monument was completed. It was not grand. It was empty. A vast circular chamber open to the sky, with no statue at its center. Only a ring of text etched into the stone floor, written in hundreds of languages. War always costs more than you think. Visitors came from across the galaxy. Leaders, refugees, soldiers who had never fired a shot. Some stood in silence. Some wept. Some felt anger. But none left unchanged. The descendants of those who had once voted for Earth's destruction walked the same halls as the descendants of those who had suffered under the endless empire. They shared space. That alone would have been impossible before. In the final years of his life, the former High Arbiter returned to the monument one last time. His body was weak. His steps slow. He had lived long enough to see generations grow up without war as a default solution. Not without conflict. Without annihilation. He lowered himself onto the stone floor, resting his hand against the etched words. "We were so certain," he whispered to the empty sky. "We thought victory meant survival." He smiled faintly. They knew better. When he passed, his final message was simple and public. Do not make them gods. Do not make them saints. Remember them as a choice. The galaxy listened. Elsewhere, on the edge of explored space, a young civilization made its first faster-than-light jump. Their ships trembled as space-time folded around them. Their leaders had studied the histories carefully. They carried no weapons. Only sensors. Only curiosity. When they emerged, their first transmission was not a claim. It was a question. Is anyone there? The galaxy answered. Carefully. Gently. Because the greatest legacy humanity left behind was not fear. I hesitated. The pause before violence. The thought before escalation. The memory before destruction. In that pause lived trillions of lives. No human voice ever spoke again. No hidden machine ever reactivated. And yet, humanity remained present. In every choice not to burn a world for advantage. In every fleet dismantled instead of deployed. in every empire that chose to become a community instead. They had not conquered the galaxy. They had changed how it measured success, not by how much it could take, but by how much it could preserve. Long after the last human record degraded into cosmic dust, their final message endured, not as a broadcast, but as a belief passed quietly from generation to generation. That war does not end when the enemy is gone. It ends when someone chooses not to continue it. Humanity has made that choice, at the highest possible cost, and the galaxy lived with it. Not perfectly, but alive.